Hey everyone, welcome to 143 Math. Today we're going to be talking about dividing fractions. So I'm going to share my screen with you. And we're going to be going over some examples about dividing fractions because I've been getting a few questions about this. So to start us off, when you divide fractions, you're actually multiplying by the reciprocal. There's not any true division involved. And so what that means is the reciprocal is the fraction flipped. So if you have 2/3, and I said, what is the reciprocal of that? You would say 3/2. So you are really multiplying by the reciprocal. So let's dive in and see what that looks like. So the way that I teach my kiddos how to do this is I say Smurf. And we say do Smurf. And do just means division only. You are not going to be doing this when you multiply fractions, only when you divide them. So here's what Smurf means. Same, keep the first fraction the same. Multiply, change that division sign to a multiplication sign. You are flipped. And this last piece right here has everything to do with the real terminology I already gave you, which is multiply by the reciprocal. So for those of you that need actual words and steps, here they are. But for those of you like myself that really just need actual examples, let me give you some. Okay, so here's the original problem. -3/4 divided by -3/8. Now, by this time, we have already learned integers in 7th grade, but just to give you a little refresher, we use what's called Dorito Man. And this can help you with negative and positive numbers when you're multiplying or dividing them. And all it is, if you have two negatives, you cross these out, and your answer is going to be a positive. Or if you have this and you end up having a -3/4 and a +3/8, you cross out a negative and a positive, and what's left is your answer will be a negative. So because we have two negatives, we already know our answer is going to be a positive down here. Sometimes I tell my students that struggle, just put a little plus sign so it reminds you that it is negative or positive. I'm sorry. All right, so here we go. Smurf. So I'm going to follow the acronym I gave you. Same. So leave this one exactly the same. M stands for multiply. So we are multiplying now. So I'm going to change that division to a multiplication. Now, here's the fun part. Okay, we are taking the reciprocal of 3/8. So you are flipped. You are flipped. Now, what I suggest to my kiddos is that we reduce now instead of later because it's just smaller numbers to deal with inside the problem. So I look across the road from each other to see if I can somehow diagonally reduce. 3 and 3 can be reduced because the greatest common factor with 3 and 3 is 3. So 3 goes into 3 once, so I can cross that out and change it to a 1. This 3, I can also do the same thing and make it a 1. Then I look the other way diagonally. Can I reduce these at all? Sure, because 8 and 4 have a greatest common factor of 4. So 4 goes into 4 once, 4 goes into 8 2 times. Now, the last step is when we multiply by fractions, because that's now what we're looking at. You multiply the numerator by the numerator. So, and that's the top number, by the way, if you don't remember that term. The top is -1 times -1, which we already know is a positive, or 2, I'm sorry. 1 times 2 is 2, and 1 times 1 is 1. So your final answer for -3/4 divided by -3/8 is a positive 2. Let's do another one. Okay, so first of all, I like to see if it's going to be a positive or negative answer up front. So I look at my Dorito man here. Hello, sir. And the negative and a positive, so I'm going to cross these out, and I get a negative. So my answer is going to be negative, so I'm just going to put it in there. All right, so here we go. Smurf, same, multiply, you are flipped. So now we're going to look at 5 and 3. Those cannot be reduced because there's no greatest common factor bigger than 1. But 4 and 6 can be reduced. So if 6 and 4 both have a greatest common factor of 2, that's their greatest common factor. So we can cross those out and do 4 divided by 2, which is 2, and 6 divided by 2, which is 3. Now I just multiply the numerator times the numerator. So 5 times 2 is 10, and 3 times 3 for the denominators is 9. Now, sometimes I'll have students ask me, okay, so this is not reduced, right? We got to change it into a mixed number. Okay, that is not entirely accurate. 10 over 9 is as simplified as it can be. So this is a simplified answer. If you're being asked to change it into a mixed number, that's going a step further, but this is already simplified. All right, I want you to try to do this one on your own. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to get it started, and then I'll give you a little head start. Okay, so I'm going to start with same, multiply, you are flipped. I see with Dorito Man, there's one negative and one positive, so my answer is going to be a negative. So now let's look at cross reducing here. 4 and 2. The greatest common factor of 4 and 2 is 2, so I can cross these out. And 2 goes into both of those. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2. Then 9 and 3 can also be reduced because 3 is the greatest common factor there. So 3 goes into 3 once, 3 goes into 9 3 times. So now all I have left to do is multiply the numerators and the denominators. So 2 times 1 is 2. I'm trying to get that to go away. 3 times 1 is 3. So negative 2/3. Hopefully you got that. Sometimes when I give my kids a problem like this, it looks different than they're normally used to. So they're like, I don't know what to do. Yeah, you do. It's the same thing. This line right here, that just means division. Okay, so this isn't really changing much of what you're going to do at all. So if you want, if it makes it more comfortable for you to do, put it in the more common form, which we see 2/5 divided by 8/15. Okay? So now what we're going to do is we are going to smurf it. So same, multiply. Now I'm going to flip this. You are flipped. They're both positive, so I don't have to worry about that at all. And I'm just going to start looking for cross reducing. So 15 and 5 can be cross reduced here because 5 can go into both of them. So 5 goes into 5 one time. 5 goes into 15 3 times. Now I'm going to look here. 2 and 8. Yeah, I have a GCF of 2 and 8. Cool. I can make those smaller. 2 goes into 2 once, and 2 goes into 8 4 times. Now I have much smaller numbers to deal with, and so I can just multiply the numerator times the numerator, which is 3, and the denominator times the denominator. 3/4 is my answer. Why don't you try this one? I'll give you a few seconds head start here. You try this one. Make it in its common form and then smurf it. Go. Okay. So this is really meaning top dog in the house is what we say when we're dividing by decimals. But the top fraction is going to go first. So we have 1/6 divided by 3/4. Okay. Rewrite it. Now I'm going to smurf it. Same, multiply. Okay, I need the reciprocal here. You are flipped. Okay, so 3 and 1, the greatest common factor of 3 and 1 is just 1. So I can't do any more with that. That's already as small as it can go. But look at the 4 and 6. I can reduce here because 2 goes into both of them. So the greatest common factor of 6 and 4 is 2. So 4 divided by that GCF of 2 is 2. And the greatest common factor of 2, 6 divided by 2 is 3. Now, once I've smurfed it and I have cross-reduced it, the last thing I got to do is multiply my numerators together and my denominators together. So 2 times 1 is 2. 3 times 3 is 9. They're both positive, so it's a positive answer. There's only one more thing I want to show you, and it involves mixed numbers. So I'll give you 2 more examples, and then we're all done. So 1 and 1/8 divided by 1 and 1/6. Here's the issue with that. You have to turn these into what we call improper fractions first, okay? So improper fractions is what we need to turn them into, okay? And as one of the teachers likes to say, you get them in their tops and bottoms so you can start dealing with them. The way I teach students how to take a mixed number, and it's called a mixed number because there's a whole number and there's a fraction together. We turn them into an improper fraction, and the way I like to teach kids to do that is called get mad at it. Sometimes they get frustrated with fractions anyways, so it's a perfect way to describe it. So when I say get mad at it, I mean take the denominator times the whole number, and that's multiplication. That's where the M comes from. Multiply these. Then once you get that number, you are going to add, that's where the A comes from, the numerator. So I'm going to do 8 times 1 is 8, plus 1 is 9. That is my numerator. But I said get mad at it. The last thing, D, stands for denominator. You need to put this number you just got over the original denominator of 8. So let me erase this here and let's do the next one. So we are just rewriting this here so we can get tops and bottoms to start dealing with it. Let's do 1 and 1/6. Let's get mad at it. M for multiply. 6 times 1 is 6. And then add the 1, which is 7. So that's my numerator. All over the original denominator of 6. Now, I've rewritten it as improper fractions. Okay, now I got to keep going. So now it's time for me to smurf it. So same, multiply, you are flipped. Oh, our box is back again. Hello. So now I look at 9 and 7 and go, okay, the greatest common factor of 9 and 7 is 1, so I can't go any smaller than that. But let me look at 6 and 8. Okay, I can reduce here. The greatest common factor of 6 and 8 is 2. So I'm going to cross these out. Let's make them smaller to make them easier to deal with. 6 divided by 2 is 3. And 8 divided by 2 is 4. So now what am I going to do? I need to do the what? Hopefully you said multiply the numerators and denominators. That would be right. So I'm going to multiply 9 times 3 and get 27. And then I need to do the bottom, 4 times 7, and I get 28. Can this be reduced? That's the question. So can 27 and 28 get any smaller than that? So when you start looking to, because sometimes if you do reduce it within the problem, it can get smaller after you multiply. It just depends on the numbers you're dealing with, but it leaves you with numbers that are much easier. So this it cannot get any smaller than that, but that's just a question I want you to ask yourself. The last one I'm going to show you is what happens when you have a whole number here. It's not too tricky once you know what to do, but it may have been a while since you've done one like this. So we know we have to get mad at this. Oh, and by the way, there are 2 negatives. So I'm going to come down here and go, my answer's a positive no matter what. Okay, so let's get mad at 1.5. Multiply, 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is negative 3 over 2. Divided by negative. Do you know how to make any whole number a fraction? All you have to do is put a 1 underneath it. Because what is 9 divided by 1? 9, which is what we started with. So it's just another way to show 9, but now we have tops and bottoms. All right, let's smurf it. Same. Multiply. You are flipped. Here we go. So 3 and 9 can be reduced here. And my greatest common factor is 3. So 3 goes into 3 one time, cross it out and put a 1. 3 goes into 9 3 times. Now I need to multiply the denominators and the numerators. So 1 times 1 is 1, and 2 times 3 is 6. So division of fractions, the main thing to remember is when you go to actually compute it, you need to take the second fraction, take its reciprocal and flip it, and turn it from a division to a multiplication sign. Good job, guys.